So right here we have a collage of clips of people talking about reparations for black people or African Americans. They're going to give their honest opinion of what they think, whether they agree with it or they don't.
Should the government pay reparations for slavery?
No.
And why?
When there are talks like this, it's boiled down to white families should pay black families. I'm an Irish immigrant. At one point, my family were slaves to the British. Now, I would be paying reparations for things that were done when my family never even lived in the country. Honestly, why should we pay for the crimes of the dead?
All right, so I've got a question for everybody that keeps wanting reparations. So at the time of the slave trade, right, different African kingdoms had all types of slaves. By the way, these slaves were black. And these different kingdoms would go to war, and then the prisoners of war they would take and make them slaves. In addition to that, other kingdoms would purposely go to war in some situations to capture slaves and sell them. So in a lot of cases, the slaves that were actually sold were captured by other black kingdoms, tribes, whatever you want to call it. So what is the reason you guys are not up in outrage and messaging African governments and countries asking for reparations from them? Because they're just as big of perpetrators as the people in the US. African tribes and kingdoms had slaves. They had them, they sold them, they went and conquered other tribes and captured those people and sold them as slaves as well. Why do we only want to see reparations from the US? I wouldn't say that's fair. Now in reality, we just need to let it go. Because everybody that committed those atrocities at that time, they're all dead. Everybody alive today had literally nothing to do with it. So the best thing to do is just move on and let it go. But since so many of you don't want to let it go, help me understand why you don't want reparations from African countries and we only want to focus on the racist white people in the US.
Here's everything wrong with reparations. By now I'm sure everyone has heard of the reparations plan that San Francisco has put out. And here are some of the stuff that they plan to do, and you can pause it if you want. A few of the things that stick out to me is that slavery never happened in San Francisco, and the people alive today have never been in slavery. But this transfer of wealth would cost the average household in San Francisco $600,000. And just a reminder, these people were not slave owners. You can't rectify an act of injustice by another unjust act. That's not how justice works. But I bet the people receiving this money would still be broke within 5 to 10 years because money's not the reason why they're broke. But I'll be honest with you, if you want to see the world burn and worsen race relations in this country, this is a great way to do it.
Because they want to look like, oh, I'm not racist, biased, racist.
So there's a lot there. The first thing I want to mention, just before I forget, you mentioned reparations, for example. It is right. It is true that there's never been a program that has specifically said, here is a cash voucher for the experience of your ancestors during slavery. However, if you look at who pays the most into the tax system in this country, historically, it has been white Americans and also Asian Americans. And if you look, I know, we got to go one at a time, though. And if you look at who has taken more out of the system, it has been black Americans. And we've spent over $1 trillion since the 1960s on the war on poverty, which disproportionately has gone to black Americans. So in a way, that has been reparations.
If we were to get reparations, what do you think they should give black Americans?
Huh?
If we were to get reparations, what should we get instead of money? You think we should get money?
No. Hell no.
Free education?
Fuck the education. Excuse me, ma'am.
What should we get?
What should we get?
You want some land and you want some seeds and you want to start over again.
A John Deere tractor?
You want some land and you want some seeds and you want to start all over again. So you're going to need a little money, but you want land. You get a black man some money, Gucci gonna have it all.
Yeah.
Diamond store gonna have it all. Car lot gonna have it all. You know you owe the black race, because how can the black race ever be equal to you? And they ain't never had nothing to try to even be equal to you. They had to have a job.
So last night I was reading and I came across some articles about reparations, and I came across the stats that say that 85% of white America are opposed to giving people of color reparations. Of course, it's the excuse of, well, people of color aren't slaves today. I didn't have slaves, so why do I have to pay? Then I read some other articles about America's history of giving reparations to the Japanese during World War II, Native Americans, how those that suffered the Holocaust have also received reparations. And I thought, well, a lot of people that are saying, well, I wasn't here for that. Why do I have to pay? Well, you weren't here for those things either. Many of you. But we paid. Maybe you or your family members didn't take part in the atrocities that happened to those groups of people, but we didn't oppose paying. You don't see the problem with that?
Why do black people deserve reparations for something they weren't alive for? That's a great question. Let's ask Sarah Beth what she thinks. This is Jebediah. Jebediah inherited over 100 acres of land, his father's South Carolina plantation in the late 1800s. He was able to use the money from that land to buy 100 more acres. In the mid-1950s, passed the land down to his son, Mark, who then sold the land for $5 million. Mark started a successful real estate company that he passed down to his son, Tim. Tim was able to take all of the wealth that he generated basically because he was just born. This is his daughter, Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth was able to go to the best schools, live in the best neighborhoods, and have the most wonderful extracurricular activities. He's now getting an engineering degree from Syracuse. Already has jobs lined up on Wall Street. Has never had to work a job. Are we really going to look Sarah Beth in her cold, dead eyes and tell her that she doesn't deserve the opportunities that's been afforded to her just because she wasn't born when the wealth is accumulated?
One of the most common responses to the fight for reparations is like, oh, why shouldn't we pay like every historical group that we've ever wronged? I think this question actually misses the stated purpose of reparations. A lot of people mistakenly think that reparations is supposed to be like an apology, which stems from a very Western idea of crime and punishment, which is like, oh, I did something wrong, here, now I'm gonna pay for it. That's not what reparations is. Reparations is a form of restorative justice. It's not so much focused on the past as it is the future. Because right now, race relations in America is fixated on a sticking point, which is that black people have been getting robbed. And you don't have to go back as far as sharecropping or slavery. Your parents' generation probably dealt with things like redlining, eminent domain, and urban renewal. These are processes that have consistently and systemically removed wealth from the black community and taken it elsewhere. Like Malcolm X said, progress is not just removing the knife out of your back, it's healing the wound. Notice that he also didn't say that progress was litigating the person that stabbed you. That's not really what we're about here. But the best the black community has ever gotten from America is promises that they won't do that specific form of oppression anymore. That's not progress. As someone who would never in a million years qualify for reparations, when you analyze black American history, it is a history of getting robbed, and they're still getting robbed. And the thing is, the consequences of that robbery don't just fall onto the black community. We all suffer because of this open wound that exists in our country. Until the United States can take accountability for the stolen wealth that it has built its empire upon, we can never fully progress. Reparations looks different in all cases, and we still don't know what it's going to look like for African Americans. But what we do know is that they're a necessary first step if this country ever wants to progress past this racial fixed point. If not, we're constantly going to be coming back to systemic racism and ultimately to slavery. Why are African Americans poor? Why are they less likely to own homes? Why do they go to jail more often? Why are they more likely to be the targets of environmental and medical racism? Because they keep getting robbed.
Absolutely, I support reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans in America. As a white man running for governor, I recognize the deep scars left by slavery and the ongoing systemic racism that continues to affect the black communities. It's not just about acknowledging the past, it's about taking concrete steps to address the economic and social inequalities that persist today. As governor, I'll make it my mission to ensure that black residents of West Virginia, especially those who are descendants of enslaved Americans, receive reparations. This is about justice, about making things right, about helping our state heal and move forward together. And let's take a cue from California. They're leading the charge with innovative approaches to reparations, setting up structures to determine eligibility and ensure fairness. We can learn from their example and tailor a program that fits West Virginia's unique needs and history. This isn't a formal policy speech. This is just me talking to you heart to heart. It's time for change, and I'm committed to being a part of that change. Let's work together to create a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. It's the least we can do, and it's long overdue.